Welcome to Owner Insights, the podcast that uncovers stories about businesses and their owners. I'm James Orchard, Managing Director of the Crew Harris Orchard. In each episode, I sit down with a business owner to hear their stories. We discuss things like why they started their business, what was their motivation, the mistakes they've made, the lessons they've learned, keys to growth, and what they do differently. These aren't how-to guides or do-as-I-say tips, just real conversations between two business people. Join us as we explore what it takes to become a truly great business. Danny Di Iorio, welcome to Owner Insights.
Thanks very much, James. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, I'm really looking forward to this chat. You have a really interesting business that's seen a lot of highs and lows over its history, but you're not necessarily one of Adelaide's best known brands.
Sure.
But I think in that regard, you've got a story which is highly relatable. So, as usual, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just for the listeners tell us some big picture numbers about your business, how many people you employ,
Sure.
what your turnover is, if you're happy to share,
Sure. Yeah.
where you're geographically located,
Yep.
and then we'll get into the story.
Sure. So our business is based here in Adelaide, out of Tonsley, and we also have a premises in San Marcos in Texas. So we have warehouse distribution in the US, and our manufacturing is done here in Adelaide at our Tonsley facility.
Right.
We employ about 14 people full-time directly here in Adelaide. Then we have half a dozen contractors who we use to install the tanks, and they pretty much do our work exclusively. And then we have another half a dozen contractors in the US, plus a couple of full-time employees that run the business for us in the US.
Right.
Last financial year, we did a touch under $12 million in revenues,
Mm-hmm.
and about 30% of that revenue came out of the US.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just what do you do for the listeners?
So we make so we manufacture water tanks.
Right.
We manufacture a flat pack water tank that is transported to site and then assembled on site by a couple of guys and some hand tools. So where tanks can't be manufactured and transported as one piece because of transport regulations, that's our smallest tank. So we do tanks from about the size of a double garage
Yep.
up to a very large commercial size tank, which might be 13 metres in diameter and 6 metres tall or 8 metres tall for commercial applications.
So flat pack. Can
Flat
you just tell us a little bit about that? I
Sure.
mean, that sounds like something that you might go and buy from that big department store down near the airport.
Sure, yeah. So if IKEA brought out a water tank,
IKEA, that's it.
it looks similar to ours. We make everything. We have a 2 metre rule, so every component on the water tank must be under 2 metres or 2 metres maximum length. Now that's because we need to put it into a crate and then ship it around Australia or around the world. And a container width door will take a crate that is just over 2 metres wide. So everything we do is under 2 metres long. So it's all done in componentry, factory components, and then it's assembled on site.
So how did you come up with that? I mean, it almost sounds like you're putting the cart before the horse.
Sure.
You're trying to come up with something that goes into a container. I mean, how did you know that you'd need a container?
Well, I mean, that's evolved over time. So
Right.
we used to do componentry that was 6 or 7 metres long because it fitted on the back of the truck.
Yeah.
But then we said, well, we want to export these tanks, and 6 metre lengths of steel just wasn't practical to ship, and the shipping costs, et cetera, were getting very expensive. So we decided that the product needed to evolve into something that we could call a transport company anywhere in the world and say, we need 2 pallet spaces.
Right.
Because if you call a transport company in California and you say, oh, I need to ship a 10,000 gallon tank,
Yeah.
they lose their mind and start charging you thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
But if all you're doing is shipping a 2 pallet space timber crate, then it becomes a few $100s.
Yeah.
So the evolution of the product over 25 years, we've been doing this now, nearly 25 years, has been about making things more transportable, more efficient to get to site, and then obviously more efficient to assemble on site as well.
Okay, so it sounds like you've taken a pretty basic product, been highly innovative, and that innovation has enabled you to export.
Correct.
Before we get into all of that, why don't we go back to the beginning? And This business started in 1986
Yep.
by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You bought it in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you what you paid for it?
Sure.
And why you bought this business and what your interest was in water tanks and why you thought you could make it work?
Sure. So my predecessor started the business in 86, really fiberglassing old concrete tanks that were leaking on farms. So he'd literally
They were leaking.
They were leaking. So
Right.
so he'd literally drive around in the country. He'd see a tank or a farmhouse. He'd drive up the driveway, knock on the door. Is your tank leaking? And one time out of 5, it'd be leaking. And he said, well, I can fix it for you. And he'd get in there and fiberglass it. And that wasn't good for his health. So by the late 80s, he'd come up with a concept of a steel tank with a truck tarpaulin put inside to retain the water. And that evolved a little bit, but not too much from there. And by 2001, the GST had come in. Mm-hmm. And this individual wasn't strong with his bookwork, etc., as many weren't at the time, didn't own a computer or anything like that. So he was looking to offload the business. Now, the figures we were provided were a little bit vague and sketchy, if you like.
So, sorry,
yep.
Danny, he was looking to offload the business because he was not comfortable with the bookkeeping element?
Correct. Yeah.
Really?
And that was his sole reason for selling at the time.
Okay.
He said
so he realised he would need to evolve from coding bank statements and old-fashioned cash books into doing stuff by software, and he didn't like that idea. I'd rather get rid of the business.
Sure, yeah. And he's 15 years down the track and getting older. And so we looked at the business, didn't really understand his numbers because they weren't very clear, but I did know one of his main suppliers, the supplier of the plastic lining that went inside the tank. So I approached him, got some sales numbers from him, extrapolated that, and worked out he was turning over about $250,000 a year, and we ended up paying him about $130,000 for the business back in 2001.
So was that $130,000 just enough to make him sell the business?
Correct. Yeah, you were basically buying what we called goodwill. At the time, there was very little. We did pay $15,000-$20,000 more for some inventory at the time. But there was no machinery because he was simply buying componentry from various suppliers around Adelaide and then giving them to a contractor to install out on site. So it wasn't much of a business when we purchased it. But at the time, I was managing a plastics company here in Adelaide for a national group, and I'd been doing that for 7 years, and I was offered a national position, which would have involved a fair bit of international travel and time away from home. And Jo, my wife, was pregnant with our second child, and we decided that we didn't want to relocate interstate away from family, etc. So that day, I actually told my employer at the time that I couldn't take the role. Opened the newspaper, and back in 2001 there were businesses for sale in the back of the advertiser, and there was a water tank company for sale. And I thought someone had told me we lived in the driest state on the driest continent on Earth, inhabited continent on Earth. Maybe a water tank company would be a good idea. So that's pretty much how it started.
Okay, so let me get this right. You've got Jo at home, pregnant with the second child. You're offered a national role with an established company, and I would assume a safe salary. And you decide, no, I won't do that. I'll go and pay $130,000 for a business where I don't really know how much money it makes.
Sure.
Right. So do you need your head read, or why did you do that?
Because I was 29, and I remember having the conversation with Jo saying that, look, if I screw this up, I'm young enough to bounce back and we'll recover. Because
well, that's true.
Yeah, because I figured if I don't try it now, I probably will never try it. And fortunately for us, the plastics company that I was working for, once I told them that I was resigning and going into this silly little business, they said, well, can you look after our business at the same time? And I said, well, maybe. And I consulted for them for a year, and they paid me a couple of $1,000s a month to look after their business, which helped enormously because the business wasn't making any money back then. So it sort of got us through the first 12 months. But shortly after 12 months, we had to let go of that arrangement and move out on our own and start growing the business.
You must have believed that it had a future, though. I mean, $130,000 for a business that's not making any money is and back in 2001, $130,000 would have bought you half of an average house in Australia, probably. So it's a fair bit of money.
Well, it was the same price as our house because we had to take a second mortgage, and then we got a loan from the bank for it at ridiculous interest rates because there was risk involved for the bank as well. But $130,000 was a lot of money at that time. Sorry
to harp on this, but can I just want to delve into why. I mean, what was your upbringing? Why did you want to take such a risk?
Sure.
How were you sure that you could make it work?
Not sure I was ever sure that I could make it work.
Yeah.
When I approached any business decision, major business decision, I tend to look at the worst case scenario, and if I can live with the worst case scenario, I go ahead. Clearly, I look at the good side of it as well, the positive side, but I always judge an opportunity by the negative side and whether or not I can live with the possible negative effects of the decision.
Yeah.
So I looked at this opportunity, and my wife's Joe's parents owned a electrical business, and they were self-employed, so they were a big influence on me as well, as far as seeing them do well, and being in control of their own destiny, and all those things attracted me to buying a business and running our own business, because I'd seen many businesses build up and then sell to equity groups or whoever, and then your employment's in danger, etc. So I don't have a university degree. I left school in year 10. I don't have a trade to fall back on. So I needed to have a crack, if you like, and really plot my own destiny and take control of my own destiny from a professional point of view. That was my main driver, was to be in charge of my professional career.
Yeah. So there was a lure of freedom and autonomy and the possibility of success.
Sure.
Yeah. And obviously with a wife and 1.5 kids at home, you were pretty determined to make it work. So the first year you turned over, in 2001, you turned over about 600,000. In the second year, you turned over about 1.1. That's a big increase in the first year. What were you doing, and how'd you make that work early days?
So the first million in turnover, or even in any concept, is the hardest to get there. But what we did straight away, so 2001, you got to remember, is pre-internet pretty much. So everything's done in rural newspapers. Advertising's done in rural newspapers. Ridiculous amounts of money spent on yellow pages, all that sort of stuff. And the power hadn't shifted to the customer yet. So the power was still with the supplier. So you'd do field days to inform the customer. You'd do a whole lot of advertising and direct marketing, etc., to inform the customer. So at that point, people were still buying locally as well. So that dealer network was still very much the best avenue to market. So
straight away, you weren't driving into the driveway of farmers like the old guy.
No, you
evolved already.
Yeah, we through my plastics background, we had distributors in that business, and I knew if I was going to get into the Victorian markets and the New South Wales, Queensland, etc., I'd have to partner up with some companies or individuals that would distribute our product there. So I put ads in the state rural newspapers looking for installers and agents, etc. And over the next few years, we developed relationships and dealers around the country.
And they started using you.
Yeah. So we created a value chain that worked for them as well. Yeah. So as the manufacturer, and then there's the agent, and then there's the installer. So right through the value chain, we sort of worked all that the way through, and grew the business through our reseller network initially, certainly.
So breaking your business down between 2001 and now, it looks like you've had distinct periods of success, followed by a 10-year period from 2007 to 2017 where you went backwards. And then from 2017 to 2025, you obviously changed strategy again. So can we just hop into that period where things went backwards from 2007 to 2017? What went wrong? So sorry, before we get there,
Yeah, sure.
where'd your turnover got to in 2007 before you started experimenting?
I'd have to look at the records, but I would think somewhere around $5 or $6 million.
Yep.
And that was remembering there was a drought, national drought, certainly in the southeast of Australia, where our biggest markets were South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales.
Yeah, that's right. It was a terrible drought, 2006-07, wasn't there?
Yeah. So, which we thought would be terrible for a water tank business, turned out to be the best thing for a water tank business. At one point during that period, we were on a 6-month lead time. So if you wanted a water tank from us or even one of our competitors, you'd have to wait 6 months because the demand just went through the roof. Because people were putting water storage at top of mind. So they built a shed or a new home, and they knew that there was a lot of rainwater that could be harvested off those surfaces, certainly in rural areas, and demand went through the roof. So we enjoyed some really rapid growth, and by 2007-08, we were turning over around $6 million, somewhere around there. GFC hit, the drought broke, and our sales, were affected significantly by that. So you couldn't sustain that level.
Okay.
So they dropped back down to $3 or $4 million, somewhere around there. Plus, we also started looking at other avenues of revenue, that being dam linings or floating covers for municipal water, larger commercial mining sort of applications. But it was never a really good fit for us. We're manufacturers, so we're not very good at throwing a heap of steel in the back of the truck, going out to site and sorting it out there. We make things in a factory environment that when they get to site, remove all choice and discretion. They go up one way, and it's a system and process business. So a system and process business and a manufacturer at heart, it's very difficult to be in a bid and win environment, that being tendering for general building or construction, etc., because that's full of unknowns and on the fly, and even though you've got drawings, etc., every job's different. The demands of the client are always different, etc. So we found that our strength was in offering a proprietary range of water tanks in certain markets to certain customers. What our customers look like, if you like, and I don't think we've filled out a tender in over 10 years.
Yeah, right.
We just stay. We'll certainly go in at tier 2 or tier 3. That being working for the successful tenderer, fire companies and those sort of people. But we have some very good relationships with those people that operate at that level. But we stopped getting involved at a tier 1 level many years ago.
So it took you a while to discover this strength, didn't it?
Yeah. So we also then we were distracted by the oil and gas sector. So the oil and gas sector came around as we were trying to...
So sorry, just to interrupt on that one, did you seek to find new markets because you'd had a big lift out of the drought that inevitably dropped off because droughts end?
Sure.
Were you seeking to get your revenue back up to that level or maintain that level? And if you were, why do you think you did that? Because $4 million in turnover is still a good business, and you can still make decent money out of that if you want.
Sure, yeah. I guess we were looking to grow, and in business, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Okay, so there was a feeling, oh God, we're going backwards here.
Correct.
We're not growing. We really need to grow.
Yeah. What next?
Okay.
So, also, I'm a believer in 7-year cycles. So every 7 years, you should be doing something different in business, in life, generally speaking. I mean, it's not a religion or anything. It's just the way things pan out. That is an
interesting philosophy.
It's just the way things pan out. And every 7 years, if you feel the business is getting stale, that's my role, is to make sure it's going in a different direction. I don't always get it right. And I've taken us down some roads that we should never have gone down. But after 25 odd years, we know what we're good at and what we're not good at. We know what to say no to nowadays, and the business is growing steadily. So when we were chasing growth, we were looking for growth wherever we could get it. That would be large contracts, things like oil and gas. We went after, oil and gas came to us because they had a problem that we could solve for them. But even then, we signed a contract with one of the major oil and gas producers, and it took a bit of to and fro because we rejected their contract based on indemnities and liabilities, etc. And we settled on $1 million liability because I said, I can recover from, if you guys take me to court and take me for $1 million for reasons unbeknown, I can recover from that.
Yeah.
But unlimited, you guys have got a whole floor of lawyers. I mean, you'll just bury me.
Yeah.
And I'd heard enough horror stories to protect myself. But again, what's the worst case scenario? So we got involved in oil and gas, knowing worst case scenario was we could lose $1 million, which meant some hard yards, but we could recover from there. So
you said something interesting. So can I put some words into your mouth?
Yeah.
Don't chase growth in any avenue. You said that correct me if I'm wrong, you said we were just looking for growth, didn't matter where it came from.
Yep.
But you think that was a mistake?
Yeah, growth for growth's sake is a mistake.
Okay.
Definitely a mistake.
Right.
We've done much better since we've identified what we're really good at and what we're really not good at. I mean, it's straight SWOT analysis. But living it every day, that is, the phone rings and somebody asks for something that we know is outside of our wheelhouse, even though it's a good opportunity, we still say no.
So if I'm a 35-year-old business owner, am I just doing a SWOT analysis to work out where I should grow, or do I need to make the mistake you made to actually learn the lesson?
Probably a bit of both, I think. I mean, you don't know what you're really good at until you start doing it.
Yeah.
And then you keep doubling down on that. So we spent some time with a guy called Goran Rus, who is a manufacturing guru out of Sweden, spent some time here in South Australia as the thinker in residence, etc. Anyway, we had a strategy session with him for a couple of days, and what came out of it was a lot of great stuff. But the main thing was what can we be the best in the world at? Now, it sounds like a silly thing to say, but can we be the best in the world at making a really large water tank packed down to really small size so it can be transported anywhere, and erected by available labour with hand tools, etc. Can we be the best in the world at doing that? And we think we are, and that's what we doubled down on. Can we be the best dam liner in the world? No. Can we be the best fire tank company in the world? No. Pumps and a whole range of other things. But putting a really big tank into a small box and then assembling it on the other side of the planet, we can do that better than anyone else in the world.
How did you work that out?
A process of elimination. We had to go at floating covers on municipal water.
So here's your entrepreneurial spirit.
Sure, yeah.
You're trying lots of things.
Yeah.
You've made mistakes, and you've come across something that works really well.
Yeah, which happened to be the thing we started doing.
So again, without putting words in your mouth, you have to try things.
I think so.
And be prepared to make a lot of mistakes.
I think so.
To actually get anywhere.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even our entry into the US market was more about, I don't want to die wondering.
Yeah.
I want to have a crack and find out. And knowing worst case scenario, this is how much money we could lose, or this is what it's going to cost us. And without having a crack, you just don't know what you're going to be really good at and what you're not going to be good at. But again, not to harp on the negativity of it, but I remember a few years into the US, I had a meeting at a Holiday Inn just outside of Austin with the couple of guys that we were working with at the time. And what we were doing was making product here in Australia, sending it to the US and charging the US cost price for the product. And when they sold that product, for a margin obviously, then they could pay us back for the product and run the business and, God forbid, make a profit. After 4 years, that business owed us $850,000 because they hadn't been able to pay for the product yet.
Yeah.
So we had this meeting in some little room in a Holiday Inn in Austin. I sat them both down. I said, I'll go to $1 million. But after $1 million, I'm pulling the pin. And that tended to light a fire, if you like, and really focus in. And we were able to get it on track. And today it doesn't owe us anything at all. So it's paying its way. So again, having a crack, sure, but knowing where your limit is. But the American experience for us taught us a couple of things, is to not give up too quickly. But in oil and gas, we hung in there too long.
So you're in manufacturing. Everyone says manufacturing in Australia is dead because our wage rates are too high to compete internationally.
Mm-hmm.
What made you think you could make it work in the US?
Well,
and why did you go to the US? Why didn't you go to Europe or Africa or New Zealand? Maybe start with New Zealand.
Yeah, I could have. We had an opportunity in the US that sort of evolved as many of these opportunities do, just as the oil and gas opportunity did. I was contacted by email from a goat farmer in rural Texas,
right,
and he wanted a large volume water tank. He'd come across my competitors' tanks who were selling into the US at that time and asked for my advice. And I said, look, I can't help you. And he said, well, seeing as though you don't have an axe to grind, then, which one should I choose? And I told him, basically my opinion. And he said, no, put 3 in the container. I'll pay for them and I'll get them over there. So
he must have a few goats.
Sorry?
He must have a few goats.
Yeah, he's got a few goats. Yeah. Well, it's Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas.
Okay, sure.
So we send these tanks. He puts them up. He said, I love them. He finds a windmill guy. He's going to distribute them for me. So we start sending tanks to the windmill guy in the US. That's going okay. We put in some criteria for the dealership, that is, minimum sales per year. So the first year he had to sell 20 tanks. Second year he had to sell 40 tanks. Third year I think we were looking for 100 tanks. First year he sells 40 tanks. This is great. We're going here. I was only making 20% on top of the product, which is not a manufacturer. It was really to get him established in the market. Second year he turned over 40 tanks again, almost identical. And the third year he's turned over 40 tanks. And I've gone, okay, well, at the margin I'm selling to you, I need volume. Then it was explained to me that he would take each individual tank himself personally. So wherever it needed to go, he'd drive to California with it because he had to pick up the check at the other end. So I was never going to grow the business that way.
Yeah.
I was going to sell 40 tanks a year in America.
Yeah.
For as long as I wanted to, but not make any money.
Yeah.
So we pulled the pin on that, and we set up our own office warehouse in just outside of Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. Well, you knew you had market traction, didn't you, by then?
Yeah. There was a market for it. Definitely a market for it. And we had one competitor who's out of Australia as well, who'd been there a little while, but hadn't really come across them in our time there. So, and our main competition were other technologies, which were more expensive and less efficient than our water tanks, if you like. So we tried the same thing we did here in Australia. That's through a distributor, but this is 2013, 2014, the internet's clicked in.
Yep.
The power's moved from the supplier to the customer, so the customer knows where to get it. So the distributor model didn't work for us in the US. We tried it for 4 or 5 years. We were just losing money, and that's how we got to, the US owes us $850,000 because the distributors just weren't working for us. So the value chain was all wrong. So then we went to a different model, went direct to market, got a new guy looking after it, who still looks after it to this day, and that was the difference. The strategy changed, the individuals running the business changed, and we were able to make a real go of it.
So you set up a company in the US? Yeah. And you employed someone in the US. Yep. And you didn't go to Dallas or Houston, Texas. You went to some little town I've never heard of.
Allen.
Why is that?
Oh, it was just outside of Dallas. It was affordable, and it was near one of the guys. Right. It was affordable, yeah. So,
and Texas, because that's where you thought your main market was in the US?
Well, it still is today. So Texas economy is about the same size as the Australian economy, just the state of Texas. Its rainfall is very similar to parts of southeastern Australia. So it lent itself well to large volume rainwater harvesting, which is what we do a lot of the time. So Texas was the obvious choice. California is very difficult to do business in, but when we set up in the US, I set up a separate company, an LLC they call it, like a proprietary limited, but in America. I did that again with my what's the worst that can happen hat on, because my limited knowledge of the US business environment is that it's very litigious and that we could find ourselves in trouble without doing the wrong thing. So I wanted to limit, they could go after the American business, but they couldn't come after our business here in Australia. So I've got a US accountant, US lawyer, US it's a completely separate business. It's owned by my wife and I, as the Australian one is, but a completely different structure.
And how do you find doing business? I mean, you mentioned the difficulties of doing business in California. That's well known. How do you find doing business in Texas compared to Australia?
The Australian people are really liked in America, especially in Texas. There's some affiliation for whatever reason. I'm not sure what it is, but so much so that we paint a big kangaroo on the side of every crate and proudly say "Made in Australia" there.
Nice.
After a couple of years, we actually had to put the word water tank on the side of it because my guys were getting told that it looked like we were transporting kangaroo meat. But,
or kangaroos.
Or kangaroos, like the giant mouse from the cartoon. But so we find doing business in America different. It's far more aggressive. It's far more transactional. But nonetheless, general business ethos and morals apply, and then you get the customer you deserve. So we have a habit of sacking customers or not doing business with people that we don't get the right message from. So that's the beauty of being a small private company. You can choose who you do business with. But no, we had to modify the product. We had to make it to American standards. We have an American engineer, and he has to wet stamp drawings for us. The councils over there require a wet stamp drawing, which literally means the drawing has to have an ink stamp on it from a certified engineer from that particular state. So our experience has been that America is 50 states rather than one country. So what works in Texas won't necessarily work in California. But we've sold several tanks in the Napa Valley and Orange County. And I was told if you can sell a tank into Orange County, you can sell it anywhere in the US because they're the most arduous when it comes to making sure that you've engineered it correctly and building permits and all that sort of thing.
So you went to the US in 17, 18, or was it before then?
I think a little bit before that we were selling to the goat farmer and the windmill guy. But 17, we went all in and started our own business,
And your turnover went from about 4 to 10, and you're now saying that that the US is about 30% of your total turnover. Where do you think this could go?
I think it'll overtake the Australian turnover. And it all depends what our friend Mr. Trump does as well and how the economy goes, etc. But for all the noise, etc., we're doing very well in America. We have been slugged with a 50% tariff on our steel tanks, which we have to pass on to the customer, obviously.
So that's a really interesting point, Danny. Can you just explain how that works? I'm sure, we hear about all the tariffs, but what does it actually mean to you?
So when we sell a steel tank into America...
But you're in America.
Yep.
So why are you selling it into America? Isn't your LLC in Texas actually selling the product? So why does the tariff apply?
So the tariff applies at the port. So whoever's importing or
so the manufacture occurs here.
Yep.
You ship it over there.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Depending on the shipping terms with the customer at the other end.
Yeah.
But we own both entities, so we just look after it from Australia.
Yep.
So we have to send an affidavit, an itemised packing list and invoice, and we have to break up every component that's on that tank, which is, there's something like 62 different components that make up a tank. So there's 62 line items. Anything that's got steel in it is taxed at 50%. Anything that's not steel is taxed at 10%. And that's paid to the ports prior to them releasing the goods to my customer.
By you?
By me. So
So that adds 50% to the price of the product for the end user in the US?
Almost. So it's on steel. So we do make a steel water tank, but what keeps the water inside is a large plastic liner.
Yeah.
Now that plastic liner is only subject to 10%. So we have to break down our commercial invoice and say this is steel 50%. It washes out at about 30%.
Okay. And has that made any impact on your sales?
Not that we can discern.
Right. Well, that's a good outcome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're in a business where I sell the same size tank here in Australia and I'll get $8,000 for it.
Yeah.
In America, I'll get 20.
Right.
Okay, so it's not it's not tight margin business. It's not a big business either. It's not a huge market. I mean, people say, I'm looking for a tank maker in America that's turning over $5 billion a year. It doesn't exist. We're building it. We're growing the pie, etc. But from water storage point of view, you've got to remember that Australia is at the leading edge.
So the idea of the tariffs was that they would put you out of business because no one would buy your product, and then competitors would open up in Texas next door and they would start selling their product for less than you were.
Correct.
And that's just not happening.
It's not happening, and we can't see it happening. The US has a labour shortage. We employ people in the US. We know how tough it is to get people in the US, and Americans want to wear Nikes. They don't want to make them. So that whole argument, I think, doesn't hold water. Pardon the pun. From my point, it certainly drives up inflation, I think, and I think in 12 months you'll see the US economy have to adjust for the amount of tariffs that are being. That's fascinating. Well, good news for you. I mean, we're in a niche within a niche, and as a manufacturer, that's how we survive. We can afford to pay our people well above award wages. And still remain competitive.
I mean, it's good for the US coffers as well because they're growing their tax pie, but it's definitely increasing inflation. Would have to be increasing inflation, and it's not actually bringing manufacturing in your sector back to the States.
Not in my sector. There are companies setting up in the US to negate the tariffs because they're in tighter margin industries or markets, etc. And we've even looked at options of making things in America out of steel. But because we've got the volume here and the processes that we employ were just much more efficient than starting from scratch in the US.
One of the things that you have talked to me about with your business, just going back a bit now, is that you had some culture challenges at one point, and you realised that you need to fix those culture things to take the business forward. Do you just want to give us a bit of a idea as to, for the listeners, as to what culture challenges were they, and give us an example of a culture challenge and how you dealt with it?
Yeah, so look, culture for us is king. And we
it's only 14 people.
Yeah, it's only 14 people, but there's a rule. There's a rule of thumb that I abide by. That is, if you've got a negative individual in your business, you need 5 to outweigh that negative individual.
But the negative individual doesn't know they're negative.
No. And normally, once you remove a negative individual, it exposes another one that you weren't aware of either. So, because there's different levels of it. I mean, there's obvious ones that just need to get out of the business. You need to get out of the business. But then there's some whisperers that you didn't know were there because the amount of noise the other one was making, etc.
Yeah, right. So, you couldn't hear the whispering.
Yeah. So look, it's culture is king, and our culture has been described as being Germanic in style. That is, we're system and process orientated. We try and remove choice and discretion from processes. Now, that doesn't mean we don't innovate. We're all about innovation. Yeah, we want to innovate all the time. But once we've innovated something to a point where we've decided that it's market ready, then we have a systemized way of making that happen, from accounting through to production, dispatch, everything. So culture is about getting people into your business who respect the culture and respect the way you go about things. We keep a clean workshop. It's our best marketing tool. People are impressed when they walk into our 6,000 square metre factory. They're not expecting that. So people that aren't prepared to push a broom or do something outside of their job title or whatever else don't last very long. I mean, my GM is the HR manager. He's the guy that fixes the machinery because, thank goodness, he's a fitter and turner by trade as well. So he'll put on some overalls and jump inside a machine and fix that as well. And that's in small business, you just have to have a team of people around you that are prepared to do whatever needs to be done.
So work out what needs to be done and get on and do it.
Get on and do it.
But you're still really quite tight on a lot of procedural things.
Oh, in a manufacturing environment, you have to be, because our tank's going to end up 400 kilometres west of Alice Springs on a cattle station. Yeah. And if you've sent them the wrong size nut and bolt, there's not a Bunnings around the corner. They're not going to be able to solve that. So we take our QA very seriously.
And just for the listeners, just explain again, this flat pack, Who's putting it together?
So contractors, tank builders, if you like, they'll come and collect the tank from our warehouse. Okay. They'll take it out to site on a tandem trailer and be towed behind a Hilux. Yeah. And there's two guys with some Makita hand tools that are just, the average size tank has about 1,200 nuts and bolts. So it does take a little while, but our biggest standard tank, we won't be on site for longer than a week. And most of the tanks that we sell, they're put up in an 8-hour day.
So it's like buying the bunk bed from IKEA, taking it home and putting it together yourself.
Correct. Yeah.
But a little bit more complicated.
But we do.
I couldn't do that, by the way. But
no. We have a saying in our business: "Can Danny do it?" Because I'm mechanically challenged myself. So
excellent.
Whenever they come up with a new component or we want to change something on the tank, the first gate is, "Can Danny do it?"
You're the low bar.
That's right. Wow. If I can't do it, then they've got to make it simpler or better. So we go to a lot of effort to make sure that we get it right in the factory, so the installer doesn't have to, bang it around out on site.
So Jo, your wife, is also key in the business. She's a shareholder, obviously.
Yep.
How do you go working with your wife?
Really well. I've got to be honest. We have different roles in the business. Jo looks after the finance, any major purchases. I have too much salesman empathy. She doesn't have. So any large truck or a piece of machinery, etc., I or the GM will send her the details and she'll negotiate the deal for us.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's banking and financial things that she looks after. But we've been fortunate that Jo hasn't had to work full-time in the business. She works part-time in the business ever since the girls were born. I've got 2 daughters, and that's enabled her to be with the girls on school holidays and every other time where, again, it gets back to why we got into business in the first place, was to have that flexibility to plot our own destiny, etc. So it was never to become ultra wealthy, but it was, the intention was certainly to get to a point where, for me, success is choices. If you've got choices, you're successful. It's not the amount of money in the bank. If you have a choice to do this or that, then you've reached success.
So you didn't sit down and write a plan. Moreover, it was about evolving really and just trying to get that growth that you talk about and try things and make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you've ended up where you've ended up, which is in a really good place.
Well, yeah, I mean, we did do some business planning early in the day, and then when we had a strategy session, we did some business planning, some formal business planning, etc. But I've never been one for follow a playbook because markets evolve, economies evolve, etc. So being a small business and the owner sitting in the business every day, we're able to react quickly. So we were able to react quickly to the oil and gas opportunity about 18 months quicker than our opposition could. Our opposition is part of a much larger group, if you like. So being able to, and the US was, again, no business plan, just it felt right and it felt like a good opportunity and it felt like something we could do. And it did play to our strengths.
And you've clearly got an innovation culture and ethos, which is why you've tried things. And that Swedish consultant saying, what can you be the best in the world at? That you seem to have hung on to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well.
Yeah, because without being the best in the world at something or striving to be, then it's just a me too. And if you're a me too, then your margin's going to drop and profitability and your longevity just isn't going to be there. I think, in the manufacturing sense, in a high labor cost market like Australia, I think we survive because we're in a niche, and other manufacturers, and there's thousands of them in Australia. There are plenty of manufacturing going on in Australia, but it's smart stuff. They're not making Nikes. They're not making wheelbarrows. They're making clever things.
Like you are.
I'd like to think so. It's a water tank after all, but it's a little bit more.
Well, it seems really simple, and everyone remembers those old water tanks on the farms back in the 70s, made of concrete with the with the wire on the top so the dog didn't fall in.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I'm actually, for the last 7 years, I've been working on another project completely outside of this, which has been for big science. I didn't even know that was a thing, but big science is an industry on its own, huge telescopes and things like that.
Okay.
So we're working on a project there that would be a very specific water tank with some internal smarts to measure gamma rays. And if that comes off, that's 4,000 tanks in the mountains of Chile. So when I say water tanks, people just think of the domestic water tank, behind the shed or alongside the house, etc. But there are lots of different applications that we can find a niche in.
And I'm sure you've got lots of competitors who are just doing the water tank in the backyard, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you're not doing that. You're doing a whole lot of other things, and you're trying to do a whole lot of other things in it.
I will still do the tank in the backyard, on a large rural property. That's our meat and potatoes. That's what we can do really well, and that keeps the lights on, etc. But we like to try and find things that others aren't doing, or in markets that people aren't necessarily involved in, that we can find a niche in.
So a few challenges in the oil and gas industry. Anything else that you just wouldn't have done or you regret?
Oh, look, certainly oil and gas was an eye-opener. It didn't play to our strengths. It wasn't, we did well when oil was 100 and something a barrel, and we did poorly when it was 70 something a barrel. We were out of there. So we hung on to it a little too long. I just thought it was another market. So we carried, I think we had 38 staff at that time. We carried most of them for a good 6-month period after it died, really. And that cost the business, a significant amount of money and put us back a little bit. But to be part of that environment, dealing at tier 1 level, we went out and got what was called the Holy Trinity, ISO 9001 and the OH&S, etc. So safety, environment and quality. But what we found was it just starved innovation. It just stopped the business in its tracks. So
say that again. You went and got the ISO 9001, 9001, and other things. Can you just say what they were again? So, and you said that starved innovation, so you wouldn't have done it.
I wouldn't have done it. The only reason we did it was to tick a box with the oil and gas producers, because they judged a supplier based on these silly credentials. Now, when we went and we had to employ somebody specifically to get us those certificates, and also a consulting firm to help us along the path, and we'd have audits and all sorts of strange things just to get these ticks. So the ISO, the quality, safety and environment ticks, and that's how big business, that was the first hurdle. If you fill out a tender or anything like that, the first question was, what quality assurance program do you have certified by a third party? So we did that, but we found very quickly that a lot of the systems that they insisted on weren't as good as our own internal systems, because our own internal systems were very customized to our business and our needs, etc. Whereas we were trying to implement something that is for everybody into our own niche. So I'd probably do it again just to tick a box so I could do business with the oil and gas producer. But as soon as we got out of oil and gas, I let it go.
Yeah.
And I haven't been asked for it again since.
Yeah.
In over 10 years. And look, in defence, you've got to have those sort of standards. You've got to be able to show a certificate in this and that. Otherwise, defence companies, governments aren't going to deal with you, obviously. But in our world, it just doesn't have any value.
So you think there's probably a place for it in 100%. Some industries, but this broad brush approach with everyone is not necessary.
No, and I think that's been identified by most of industry now, because, as I said, we haven't been asked for it. And we do water tanks for government bodies, here in South Australia and interstate, and nobody's asking
But your
for
customers are your ultimate test. If you're doing things that weren't of a certain quality, you'd lose customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the ISO 9000, the Holy Trinity, was really about bringing on new customers. So being able to sit down with the Origins of this world and AGLs and those sort of people and getting through the door. If you didn't have them, you just wouldn't get through the front door. But it really just didn't suit our culture, our business, our people, our skills, all those things. So.
And what about where to from here? I mean, we talked about the US taking over from Australia.
Yep.
Then what?
Yeah, so look, the US is going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to focus on making a really good widget for that market, which we're doing. The Australian market, we continue to develop our product into traditional markets and growing that pie, if you like. But the big science project is probably where the future of the business, future growth, significant growth is going to come from. I mean, those contracts are worth $40-50 million, and they're spread over 3 to 5 years, etc. They're difficult to get, especially in this environment, because they need to be funded by mainly government sources, etc. But yeah, for us, it's about, as I said, every 7 years we're reinventing something. So the first 7 years were about resellers here in Australia. The next 7 years was about oil and gas and mining and commercial work, etc. The next 7 years after that was about export and new markets, etc. So not shut my eyes, but I think big science is a big project, is a big opportunity for us, and doing more export in more countries.
I'm a little bit nervous about asking this, but that 7-year thing's got me intrigued.
Right.
What have you changed in the last 7 years on a personal front?
Sure. Yeah, look, I guess I look at my family life as my kids, so my eldest is 28 now, so, my time with them is different. They've both left home now. So, family life is different over the last 7 years, etc. From a personal point of view, I'm much more the CEO, or I work on the business. So over the last 7 years, when our sales plummeted and we were scratching around for things to do, we took the eye off the ball, etc. So I spent 3 years in production. I just sat in the production office and ran production while my GM looked after sales and everything else. But lately, the last 3 or 4 years, I've been able to just focus on what next. So I focus on the US, I focus on big science projects, improvements in the business, working on the business rather than in the business. Clearly, I get involved in the business, but I'm much more aware of empowering people. So we had a lot of difficulty getting a production manager, for example. We had some great ones and they left us, and we weren't able to replace them and successfully. And in the end, our culture is so strong now. We have area supervisors, if you like. There's 4 areas of our production, and there's 4 people that look after our production. They report straight to the GM. All my communication goes through the GM and then through the team. That way, I certainly still communicate with the whole team, but we're a lot more structured and we empower a lot more people to do a lot more things. So we hold them accountable. You can't hold people accountable if you're not going to authorize.
So as your business has grown, your role's really evolved.
It has, yeah. And I've managed to put people in some key seats that have enabled me to do that.
Yeah.
Without the right people in the right seats, then you just can't.
Yeah. Well, Danny, the numbers are the scoreboard in business.
It is,
and you can't argue with the scoreboard. You started in 2001 with a $600,000 turnover, and now it's way beyond that and continuing to grow.
Sure.
Thanks for coming in and having a chat. It's been a really, really interesting discussion.
No, I appreciate it.
I think that it's clear that you know who you are, you know why you've done what you've done, and you've been able to implement. And
taken some time, but
sure, you've made some mistakes, but you've been prepared to innovate. You've come up with something that is world's best out of Adelaide. You've taken it to the States, and it's going really well. So, well done.
Thanks very much.
It's a fascinating story, and thanks for sharing it with us.
I'm glad to be here. Appreciate it. Thanks, James.